All right, good morning. Uh, Great to be here this morning on the fall equinox. And I think instead of the meditation, we're going to start with a poem. And this was a poem that I wrote this morning. And I wrote it actually for a friend of mine who transitioned from a drug overdose. And I just wrote it for the way I was feeling. So you can take a moment to just close your eyes and let this poem welcome you into the darker hours of autumn. My first fall on Madeline Island, I witness a community moving through the birthing pains of death and rebirth. Goldenrod turns brown, red orbs hang heavy in the orchard, and I stare at a vacant seat in the 12-step meeting, the one that once held so much life. This has been a year of falling away, of fading out, of flash floods of trauma. This has been a year of cursing and rage that have somehow simmered into courage. The annihilating alarm, swiping the blankets and flipping the mattress, robbing me of the option, the privilege of sleeping through this. I can't sleep anyhow. I rise in the middle of the night to face the moon, washed in the awe of her brilliance. So sacred it feels like church, or at least what church should feel like. In the dark solitude, in the places I once feared to go, wisdom washes in. My eyes adjust. I see what was once hidden. I hear the psalms this inland ocean sings. Everything will come to light. Everything will come to light. It repeats wave after wave. And there it dances defiantly on the water. Even in the face of death, it sings, even in the suffering, painting boldly on the canvas of these apocalyptic times. Who knew the world could hold such resolve, such revolutions, such reverence? In the fire where women once perished, I offer my old allegiances to privilege, to passivity, to gods and governments that could not help but fail me. As I move through the autumn equinox, the sacred threshold, I breathe with the contradictions and the contractions so that I may develop a willingness to see what is true, not only for the persecuted, but for the persecutor, to stay awake, to stay awake. This is only winter. We will come through. The story isn't over. This is just the intermission, the invitation, the initiation. The spring will come. Something good will bloom from this. It's my poem. So I will move back to my script for the service. Okay. So good morning. Wait, that's announcements. Hold on one second. Here we go. Wait, that's not it either. One moment, please. Go off course and I get a little lost. I'm finding my way, as my friend Mary likes to say. Okay, welcome everyone. It's time to begin, and we're going to start off with poems, and that has already happened, so we can move on from there, and we can begin to share our mission statement, which is that Speakeasy is a diverse and progressive spiritual community sharing a message of love, engaging in conversations that inspire creativity and creative expression and spiritual well-being. We honor the Divine Mother and we follow the teachings of A Course in Miracles and the principles of love. And we see you as a unique expression of love, capable of divine embodiment. Here at Speakeasy, we say that truth is our passion, that love is our religion, that care is our currency, and that peace is our goal. And we attempt to speak easily about tough and tender topics so that we can navigate life with greater wisdom and grace. We devote this service to the Divine Mother and Mary Magdalene and Jesus and Buddha and all the names of God and all the saints and all the enlightened teachers and all of their teachings, specifically A Course in Miracles. And we welcome you. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We're so glad that you're here and that you've chosen to spend your Sunday morning with us. We're a social media friendly community. And so we invite you to check in on our Facebook platform and share your own invitations and events, as well as sharing our invitations and events. And if you're watching our live stream on YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe and share. We're a spiritual community with a global message, and we invite you to help share the message. If you received a reminder via text today and you know someone who could benefit from this powerful conversation that Todd Fink is going to share with us, just copy the invitation and then paste it and then go ahead and text it forward. It's super easy, and everyone loves to be invited. So it's great to be here with you this morning. And if this is your first time, welcome. Thanks for joining us. If it's your second time, welcome back. And if it's your third time, we hope that you consider this your spiritual home. Our spiritual community is a place to connect. We'd love to be able to recognize you by name. So if you're comfortable, please add your name on your Zoom profile. Before we get to Todd Fink and this deep dive into what is evil and what is life and how do we navigate these experiences, we have Shannon Provost, who will be sharing our invitations and announcements for the week. And that will be followed by Sherry Ransom, who will be doing a prayer for us. And that will prepare us for the talk, and then the community offering, and then the conversation. And in the conversation, we encourage you not to leave your brains or your background or your beliefs at the door. We don't have all the answers, but we love the questions. So now that you have a roadmap of the flow of our gathering, I will go ahead and pass this to Shenanigans, Shannon Provost.
Hello, everybody. My name is Shannon Provost, and I am a grateful member of the Speakeasy community. We are a virtual community offering a daily classes and events on Zoom to support your spiritual journey through the week. Some of the highlights that we invite you to participate in are as follows. So tonight and Thursday night at 7:18 p.m. Central Time, we gather for Sacred Sanctuary, which is a contemplative practice of prayer and meditation for peace and forgiveness led by Gigi Laporte. And then if you or someone you love is struggling with any kind of addiction, we have a group called 12 Steps to Miracles that meets on Wednesdays at 12:30 p.m. Central Time. We mix the principles of 12 Steps and A Course in Miracles. All are welcome, and you can join at any time. And then starting on Monday, this is the big announcement, October 6th at 10 a.m. Central Time. Join us for the Artist Way, which is a 12-week course led by Maureen Muldoon and Jerome Imhoff. This course is an inspired roadmap that offers precise steps to unlock and reinvigorate creativity. It will support you in achieving alignment, accountability, and action from the initial concept to the ultimate fruition. Registration is now open for this class, and don't miss a chance to reserve your spot. All of our classes and events and details can be found in our calendar of events in the chat over here on the side or speakeasyspiritualcommunity.com. Thanks, everybody. Happy Sunday.
Good morning. My name is Sherry Ransom. I'm a grateful member of this community. I'm here to offer us a moment of prayer. So let's just take a deep breath and center ourselves. Take one more deep breath, close your eyes, and let these words wash over you as we prepare. Dear God, thank you for this gathering on this beautiful Sunday. Calm our minds and spirits. Take away any despair of yesterday. Help us to forgive the things that caused us judgment and distraction. We now choose to begin again. Bless our path to the light of your love. We surrender our hearts, our time, our love to this meeting and message. We only ask that you illuminate our minds. A moment of silence. And so it is. Amen.
All right. So thank you so much, Sherry and Shannon. It's great. I also wanted to mention that today is National Day of Gratitude. So I'm super grateful for Todd Fink. And I'm sure you're super grateful for him too, if you've gotten to listen to any of his podcasts or any of the conversations that he's stirred up here at Speakeasy. If you don't know, he is the host of Kind Mind podcast, and he is the co-founder of the Giving Tree Band. So he's got all of this great wisdom and all of this great music. And he's also a licensed therapist who holds certificates in addiction counseling and mindfulness meditation teachings. Todd is a guest speaker once a month here with us, and you can find his bio and ways to connect with him in the chat. But these bios, they don't really do us justice because, addictions counseling and mindfulness meditation teacher, like that's just scratching the surface. Like this is a man of deep wisdom that has been cultivated and engaged with for decades, from the time he spent in Ireland and studying in India. And he's kind of a rare bird, to tell you the truth. Like I don't know too many people who live the embodiment of their teaching. He really lives the embodiment of his teaching. And I don't want to say that's rare, but I don't, it's not an easy thing to get to, is what I'll say. And he's done it. So if you've been blessed by him, if you love him, put some hearts up and welcome our guest speaker, Todd Fink.
Thank you, Maureen. That was really sweet and powerful. Thanks for sharing your poem, which was really perfect for today, and for reminding me and everybody about the equinox. Yeah, happy fall, everybody. That means we got a new season. And National Day of Gratitude. Grateful to know that. The equinox is special because astronomically it's special for people for centuries, because they noticed in the northern hemisphere on this day or at this time that there time, so it represented balance. We've talked a little bit about this before, previous equinoxes, spring equinox perhaps. And I like how Maureen put it about holding contradictions. In my talk today, I'm going to use that darkness as a metaphor for what we feel is evil or hate in the world, which seems to be, rather emboldened lately. I was saying before we started that it doesn't really seem like the world is trending towards harmony, but maybe there's another way to relate to that or reframe that, or maybe there's a scale with which we're unable to perceive all the seemingly tragic events around us in life and in the world. I called this talk "Evil is," I think, what was it? "Evil is never the final fact." I got that idea, or that inspiration came from a book I read years ago by the early 20th century Indian poet Rabindranath Tagore. It changed my life. I like to come back to this book every once in a while. It's called Sadhana, which means spiritual practice, and the subtitle is The Realization of Life. Chapter 3 is about the problem of evil, which I'm going to explore.
Is he freezing or am I freezing?
I think Todd might be freezing. Oh, you're back.
Am I back?
Yep.
Okay, sorry about that.
No problem.
He says the question why there is evil in existence is the same as why there is imperfection, or in other words, why there is creation at all. We must take it for granted that it could not be otherwise, that creation must be imperfect, must be gradual, and that it is futile to ask the question why we are. But this is the real question we ought to ask. Is this imperfection the final truth? That's what inspired this idea for me. Is evil absolute and ultimate? The river has its boundaries, its banks, but is a river all banks? Or are the banks the final facts about the river? Do not these obstructions themselves give its water an onward motion? The towing rope binds a boat, but is the bondage its meaning? Does it not at the same time draw the boat forward? The current of the world has its boundaries, otherwise it could have no existence. But its purpose is not shown in the boundaries which restrain it, but in its movement, which is towards perfection. The wonder is not that there should be obstacles and sufferings in this world, but that there should be law and order, beauty and joy, goodness and love. The idea of God that man has in his being is the wonder of all wonders. He has felt in the depths of his life that what appears as imperfect is somehow the manifestation of the perfect. Just as a man who has an ear for music realizes the perfection of a song, which in fact he is only listening to a succession of notes. Man has found out the great paradox that what is limited is not imprisoned within its limits. It is ever moving and therewith shedding its finitude every moment. In fact, imperfection is not a negation of perfectness. Finitude is not contradictory to infinity. They are but completeness manifested in parts, infinity revealed within bounds. And he goes on to say one other line I want to share. When we watch a child trying to walk, we see its countless failures. Its successes are but few. If we had to limit our observation within a narrow space of time, the sight would be cruel. But we find that in spite of its repeated failures, there is an impetus of joy in the child which sustains seemingly impossible task. We see it does not think of its fails so much of its power to keep its balance, though for only a moment. So imagine if, in all these challenges in our life or our world or in our country or in the politics, imagine if we brought even a fraction of the moral courage that the baby brings to trying to get up despite all of the falls. So I remember the words of St. Francis of Assisi, where there is hatred, let me bring love. Contemplating this can reveal deeper insights to assist us in reprogramming our psychological reflexes to be cruel or to be hateful. A person on the internet, for example, is never only their opinion, though social media dehumanizes us by reducing us to a single theme or facet. And every opinion has a half-life. Opinions are like clouds in the sky, appearing to be permanent at a glance. When we pay more attention, one can perceive all the numerous forces that are continuously reshaping the opinion and our beliefs and our sense of self. Every profile picture or social media handle is merely a doorway to an infinite interior that we totally forget about. It's similar to road rage. Once you put a metal car or truck around somebody, we don't see them as a person anymore. We see them as something mechanical. And so these are the two things that happen with the digitization of life. People
I think Todd might have just frozen again, but we'll get him back.
What do you think people are going to do?
But we forget this even about ourselves. I mean, I'm continuously peeling layers around myself in pursuit of self-knowledge. What I used to think I believed changes. So what to speak of somebody else, how little we must really know about them. Our spiritual task, especially in these seasons of heat, is to refuse the fixation of the single facet, to rehumanize, to add context. What we're experiencing socially is called context collapse, philosophically, which means we just don't know much about people. We know one thing. When I was talking with people I love in my family, I was telling people that if all I engaged with was the one thing that we don't agree on or their political beliefs, we would hate each other. So to meet any neighbor is more than well, this is a kind of moral hygiene to actually be with our neighbors again, and to love thy neighbor as Jesus taught. You know, we hear sometimes in the news that there's so much discord and political division. What we need is dialogue, and I have promoted that in my talks on my podcast. But I've been thinking about this more, and it's not that that's only a small part of it. Like, I don't need to just find my friends and loved ones and make time to debate them or dialogue with them. I love the people in my life because I have seen their fullness. I know more about them. So rather than just, we got to talk about the things that stir up hate in us, we have to just spend time with people. We have to see people in their fullness. We have to see them as a mother, a father, a brother, a friend, um, you know, whatever their other personality traits are, their other identities are. We have to be able to engage with all that. It's like, can I stay with a person? Can I have them over? Can we have a meal together? Not just debate our differences. When I played basketball a lot throughout my life, I had a lot of basketball friends. I really didn't know a lot about them other than that. And I really loved and cared about them a lot. But it was like the inverse. All I saw of them was the thing that we agree on, or the thing that we both love, which was the sport. The chance that a disagreement can be a bridge is what happens when we restore dimension.
Could invite him to turn his camera off if that might be
The
helpful.
transformation. We have to try to better understand. Sorry, we getting disconnected again. Can you hear me, Jack?
Yep.
Yep,
we can.
you're
Okay.
back.
Cool. Sorry about that.
That's okay. So I guess moving forward, we might have some little blips. So we'll just practice patience. That's all.
All right, thank you. Yeah, and you can let me know if it's
That's fine.
extended.
Mhm.
Evil seems to have the wind at its back for a few reasons. Power, secrecy, money, these things all go together and consolidate and concentrate rather quickly. Clandestine behavior around transgression produces solidarity. When everyone in the group knows if any of us break our code, we all go down, they have a shared zero sum game that binds them tightly in a way that people who are just going about their business, trying to be good and trying to live a moral life, don't benefit from. There's an asymmetry of their motivation. Aggression and control pay immediate dividends in terms of capital and investing and building, profit, status, security. Goodness doesn't get that kind of return in the marketplace. Goodness is something that does bless you, but way beyond the limitations of the world. And all the great teachers taught this world isn't real. This world is a shadow of the real world, or the soul is immaterial. Or like what Jesus said, what good is it if somebody profits everything or gains this whole artificial world, but loses themselves, or loses their soul, or loses their place in the divine order? So our responsibility spiritually is to cultivate this kind of detachment, not lack of compassion, detachment from jealousy, from greed, or from overly getting into that judgmental mind state, which starts to pollute our own peace. There's also the networks that exploit anger and hatred and fear and outrage. And finally, harm can be anonymous now. It can be delegated out. The evil that people want to do can be done by algorithms, proxies, bots that I mentioned, drones in warfare. And all the technology creates this distance so people don't have to really see the hurt in the eyes of their victims. So this question arises with the problem of evil. How could a loving God allow this? It's tough to suffer and not ponder that, or see mass suffering, mass chaos, and not look up and go, wait, is God seeing this? What does he or she think of all this? But consider the scale. From the ground, a single storm can look like evil cast down from God. Floods, destruction, even death from a tornado, from a hurricane. But then even we, the humans, are impacting this weather, not just Mother Nature delivering it to us. But generally speaking, from the planetary perspective, zooming out, the storms are necessary. They recycle the nutrients, they shape our landscapes, they regulate itself. Life would not be possible without these dimensions of nature. On the time scale of a century, the tectonic plates look like violence. But on the time scale of eons, it's the very reason we have continents to live on. The philosopher Alfred Whitehead called this the fallacy of misplaced concreteness, mistaking the part for the whole, the event for something essential. So imagine bringing a tapestry, the whole of creation, but bringing the tapestry right to your eyes, or looking at it under a microscope. You would find all these tiny holes which get magnified, or gaps, but that is not the meaning or the function of the tapestry. Similarly, if an alien landed from an outer space, from another planet, and picked up a violin on our planet and asked you, "What is this?" you might say it's a musical instrument. It's a unique musical instrument, and it's used in symphonies and classical music, and it's played with a bow. But you wouldn't say it's an auditory torture device that produces screeching sounds to irritate the ears, even though the probability of your first answer, producing beautiful music, is a very low probability when you put the violin in the hands of nearly anyone. The likelihood that the beautiful music can be produced is minimal. So what that shows within us, the capacity to orient towards purpose and not the process alone. The question or problem is not just of evil, then it's whether creation should be permanently perfect at the onset. Well, we have creation myths which suggest that it was perfect at the onset, like the Garden of Eden. And then we have the wisdom traditions that teach us how God consciousness has divided itself and created the multiplicity and separated itself into an ego to enjoy or pretend to journey back to perfection or reunion. Now, with the problem of evil, we have the Epicurean paradox. It goes like this. It's an argument against God. If God, number one, if God is omniscient, all knowing, then wouldn't he know about all this evil in the world? And two, if God is omnipotent, all powerful, then shouldn't he be able to prevent the evil? And three, if God is omnibenevolent, all loving, then God would want to prevent that evil. And yet, point four, there is evil. So therefore, he's either not one of these things or none of them, and thus he wouldn't be God as we think of what God is. However, these arguments assume that we know what evil is and that it's definable and that everyone agrees on that definition, which is far from true, because what is evil to one person or a group or a religion is not to someone else. To someone else, that's not only not evil, but it might even be good or holy to someone else. So I want to deconstruct evil in 5 ways, and then we'll have a conversation about this. Number one, evil is not substantive, which means, like St. Augustine argued, evil has no independent essence. It's not a thing created by God. Rather, it's a privation, meaning there is a lack of goodness, or like darkness, there's a absence of light. The shadow is not a thing. It is the absence of the thing, which is light. Now, of course, we encounter shadows, but they never outlast the sunlight. Coming back to what Tagore said, if evil is not a substance, but a shadow, then the logical puzzle changes. It's not about why God created evil, but how his creation and creativity itself involves privation, involves shadows and light, space and substance, distortion and truth. Right. Secondly, evil as relative or contextual. Evil arises when life is disconnected or cut off from our unity, or when selfishness obstructs harmony, wholeness. From that perspective, evil is not definable in absolute terms. What appears as a evil may be the partial view, like the hole in a tapestry or the screech of a violin. It's a distortion of its purpose, not a final fact about the instrument or about music itself. Now, at the scale of society and the chaos of war, we might consider that as like the whole orchestra tuning up before the performance. Well, if the tuning up is all you've known, the world would seem quite wicked indeed. And three, evil as epistemic error. Epistemology means, how do we define knowledge? What does it mean to know something? And some spiritual traditions like Buddhism or Vedanta and Hinduism, and also in A Course in Miracles, there really isn't a notion, a true and final notion of sin. So what is called evil then is in these traditions is tied to ignorance. It's called avidya in Sanskrit. Vidya means knowledge or truth, and the A is negation. So misperception. Both the perception of evil and the act of hatred is born of the misperception. In our Western conditioning, psychological conditioning, we tend to judge a fracture as a failure. We assume brokenness deems something final, and all things break, including relationships. But under that Western cognitive structure, we just throw things away and have single serving items and utensils, and we replace our phones all the time. And when it comes to relationships, we assume that the fracture means failure and represents something permanently true or permanently flawed about the connection. Well, the connection of the relationships are not about truth anyway, but they're about process, because relationships are for two egos to work out their egos. Anyways, in the Japanese aesthetic philosophy of wabi-sabi, there is the practice of kintsugi, which is repairing cracked pottery once like a vase or pot is dropped. And the cracks are repaired with a lacquer mixed with powdered gold. And this actually makes the fracture more visible, but also honored and radiant. The break is revealed as the site of transformation, where the vessel becomes more valuable for having been broken and healed, because now it's one of a kind, where you might be able to get any number of the vase prior to it being broken with the exact same build and dimensions, but you can never reproduce a broken and repaired vase that's repaired with gold, at least not with the exact same cracks. The way something cracks is completely unique. Rare means more precious. And seen in this way, evil is partly a problem of judgment. We judge the cracks as failures and losses as absolute. And sometimes that suffering is meaningless. Like, look how meaningless this suffering is. There can't be a God because of all this meaninglessness. But as we discussed before, previous sessions, is the crack also the place of grace? In medicine, we see that the healed bone can become stronger. When I sprained my ankle in high school playing basketball, when it healed in a few weeks, now it takes a few months, I could jump higher and run faster. A tree trunk, once it gets scarred by lightning, may twist into new patterns that give it unexpected resilience and also added beauty. So our places of ruin may be the places of greater integrity, literally, like physically, physical integrity, but also moral integrity, because it's also loss that really teaches us the value of anything. And sometimes we just cannot have that perception until the fissure, the crack, the break. But I don't want to romanticize harm, harming people, or deny the reality of hatred. Like, wounds are real, betrayals are painful, violence destroys things. But the wabi-sabi philosophy reminds us that, evil's apparent finality lies only in our presumption that brokenness can't be redeemed. The deeper wisdom here is that whatever's been deformed can be reformed, hence reformation. So perhaps part of what we call evil is not only the event itself, but also our insistence that brokenness has no place amongst beauty. So let's experiment with releasing that presumption whenever we encounter the break. And how do we do this? But just by simply softening into humility. Let life show you something. And fourth, this then leads to the problem of a definition, that it's a mistake in perception. And, in this view, evil's less a metaphysical thing and more of a cognitive category that we superimpose onto perception. The very act of defining evil assumes a perspective limited by time and ego. If evil can't be defined absolutely, like if it's parasitic, relative or altogether illusory at the deepest level, then the logical argument against God disintegrates. The premise that evil exists becomes unstable. But yeah, suffering, cruelty, harm, that all exists, at least in the relative sense. But evil with a capital E may not. And the argument against God assumes that there's some kind of fixed or essential evil. And if that assumption is flawed, well, then that case is flawed. And this leads me to the final point, which is a gradual realization of life, of divinity, truth. Evil often gets its definition from suffering somewhere. We think there's evil because we suffer or someone suffers. And it is the suffering that is inflicted via evil that creates this concept. But suffering has a paradoxical role, like no pain, no gain, as the saying goes. But because suffering also awakens us to God or to deeper truth, like the cracks in the gold, loss, suffering is also often the only way to transcend. And through pain and struggle, the soul is tested and refined. I say soul, but really it's like the ego is shed. We're made conscious of the ego's dependence on the larger whole. All the things are illusions, and their maintenance, including maintaining a relationship, also maintains the ego because it's maintaining identity as separate, independent agents in creation that could go against God or go against nature. So suffering can thus be the condition for self-transcendence. And therefore, what appears as punishment, and it's hard not to have that thought as an intrusive thought. Man, God must hate me, or I'm such a failure, or this person hates me, or the belief in limitation. I'm never going to be happy. I'm never going to get better. But what appears as punishment is often the training of love. If it was totally eliminated, suffering from creation, then love and kindness everywhere would be reduced to a transaction. Everyone and everything is good to me, and therefore I'm nice back to everyone and everything. But that is an outer conditional rather than an inner truth. And we want to love because we love for love's sake, not because it's earned or has conditions. And the only way to tap into that deepest truth, that irreducible spark, is to know that we can do it despite the apparent differences or the apparent evil in the world. This echoes back to the broader poetic vision that we highlighted in the beginning, including Tagore's perspectives. Pain is not meaningless. It can be a gateway to realization if it reconnects us to the infinite. So thank you. I look forward to our discussion.
Wow, my goodness. Beautiful. Thank you so much. So much to think about. And I'm looking forward to the conversation as well. But for now, we are going to go to Shannon Provost for our community offering.
Wow. Looking forward to the conversation too. Hello again. So Speakeasy is a non-for-profit virtual spiritual community, and we exist on the generosity of our community members. We thank you for playing your part and for taking the opportunity to make a donation for today's daily bread if you feel spiritually called to do so. Your generous donations help us bring spiritual leaders, artists, and speakers to Sunday service and keep important conversations going. Jeremy's addition, as the law of circulation states, freely we give, freely we receive. As you were spiritually fed by today's conversation, I invite you to go within and see what is yours to share. No gift is too small. The donation link is in the chat, as well as our website, speakeasyspiritualcommunity.com. Thanks.
All right. Well, this is the true. Thank you, Shannon, and thank you everyone who continues to support these conversations. It's greatly appreciated, and with your support, we're able to actually tithe and offer scholarships to people in our community. So that is a real benefit. Thank you. So now it's a time for a truly unique experience of Speakeasy. This is where we invite you to speak easily, to find your voice, your questions, your truth, share your thoughts, your inspirations, your awareness. When you feel called to just share a question or comment, just raise your virtual hand, which is located in the reaction tab of the bottom of the screen. And please allow your video to stay on so that we get to know who you are and see you. I'm going to kick it off with a couple of things, Todd. First of all, thank you so much. Such a great topic to venture into and have a community conversation around. And a couple of awarenesses and thoughts I had was like around the wabi-sabi. Like, I love that principle, first of all. And what came to my mind was like, I've had a relationship, my first marriage, that was just fracture upon fracture upon fracture with no gold poured in. And so what we had was like this fractured experience, which eventually, once we separated from each other, was something that I could use to apply spiritual principles to. And when I finally transformed my grievances and I think about evil as the opposite of life. It's, evil spelled backwards is live. So I think like this is where I wasn't living into, or something was kind of stagnant or dead here. But when it was transformed, the whole thing became golden. Like the whole thing became golden. And I think about that relationship as a really golden classroom. The marriage I'm in now, like we really haven't had too many fractures, but we did have one recently. And when you talk about that, that break is where, you fill with gold and it becomes more valuable. I actually feel like we have a stronger relationship now because of it. And I love the idea of what is broken is still considered beautiful, because is it broken or is it fractured or can it be broken all the way? But like the idea of adding gold to it actually makes it more valuable. And if you have a few cracks in your relationships, it's just, like no pain, no gain. Like you actually gain a greater value in your relationship for knowing what it can withstand, I suppose. So, and also that trespassing breeds tenderness in a way. I know that seems weird, but like after this man died in our community, I've seen a lot of people, but after the funeral, everyone was so tender that they made eye contact. They gave out more hugs. Do you know what I'm saying? And I'm like, oh, that's so beautiful. Why do we wait? Why do we wait for that? And yet that's what happens. So yeah, those were my two of my thoughts on this. And I don't know if you have anything to share
Well,
with that.
that's really beautiful. And, thank you for that vulnerability. And I remember the story that you've shared many times about what was your first marriage.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, that part of your story is totally filled with gold. You wouldn't share it in these lessons if it didn't have value, right? So repairing the vase in Wabi Sabi, I mean, it's like maybe I put the vase back where it was, maybe I give it to somebody else. You know what I mean? Um, so I think that's a good point also, which is like when it comes to relationships, nobody's saying that wholeness means you go back to what it was like before the fracture, because the vase doesn't go back to being, in wabi sabi or in kintsugi, it doesn't go back to how it was. It moves forward to something transformed, right? And where that goes, who knows? May not be up to us, but it is transformation, right? So yeah, thank you for sharing that. I do think that this idea of brokenness as final is something that we've kind of got to engage with spiritually.
Yes.
And knowing that all things break. I mean, I'm going to drop this water bottle. My phone has a tiny crack in it. All things break.
Yes.
Right.
What's so beautiful too is you mentioned the child that attempts to walk. And he could take 1,050 billion times and nobody's counting. No one's counting. But when one man falls, we're like, he's done. Do you know what I mean? Like we give as we adults, we're like 1, 2 times, you're done. You had your time.
So what does that teach us? It must be that we learn to judge, right? Because as you pointed out, the baby's not counting. It could fall 10 times in a row. It's like maybe the 11th time. It focuses.
Yeah. We're not counting either. We're not counting either, which is really interesting to me. Like, why
That's
do
a
I
good point.
give grace to the baby and not
Right,
as
we're inspired. You can do it. You can do it.
yeah, right?
But then but between adults, you're right. It's like you fell, you're out, canceled, done, or whatever it may be,
I guess we expect more from adults. Like I think about when my son Owen was learning to walk, I was like 1,002 times for you, my kid. You get as many as you want. But then when he had an addiction, I was like, okay, after the 20th time, I'm done. I don't know what to do. So it is interesting. It is interesting, not just when we're talking about addiction, but there's also other ways to apply that. Like just in regards to forgiveness, and Jesus says forgive 70 times 7 or something like that. That's many, many times.
yeah. And however this looks, it's hard to say, but what we can't be done with is love and compassion.
Exactly. That's exactly right. I'm done trying to figure it out on my own. That's what I'm done
Right.
with. And that's
Yeah.
when we actually got help. So, okay. Hey,
Well
Ed.
said.
Good morning. Thank you, Maureen. Thank you, Jack, for acknowledging me as well. My name's Ed Thornton, and Todd. I would say that because of some chain of events with a loved one, I had and a very grateful chain of events. I've come to be participating in A Course in Miracles, where I didn't believe I'd learn anything, and I have learned a lot of things. I can say that after listening to you now the third time, you're truly an intellect and have a wealth of knowledge and wisdom that you've attained in any number of subjects. What I want to just hang on is what you started out with earlier, calling it a context collapse, which and you used it with respect to what's happening in the world, most things in the world, as to government and politics and leadership, I would say. Um, I come from a world of the Earth's laws, law enforcement, jurisprudence. Spend most of my adult life practicing in those arenas, where for any number of reasons somebody has to come to me for something. I'm generally considered a fixer, which that's not done me a lot of good. And I don't know that I did anybody else any good. But I know this course has some underlying doctrines that everybody believes in and then looks to practice, starting out with some really key words like love, peace, forgiveness, understanding oneness and isness. So if you genuinely listen to people that have practiced in this course longer than I, you could come into any conversation or a meeting of somebody you never knew before, and you're hearing something that you could consider, based on what you said, a context collapse. And then if somebody asks my opinion, I have a new way of addressing them with a certain context because of this course. And I just had to practice that before I heard you use context collapse, because I visited the quote unquote mega church that I used to be part of the leadership in, a Bible church, non-denominational, very, very big, very, very successful. But they lost their senior pastor, who decided to retire after 30 years. I can promise you they've got a context collapse about why we're even at church, what our beliefs really are. So I really appreciate everything about you, and I appreciate the opportunity to say something about my complicated life and how it's been positively affected because of listening to people like Maureen and Dove and Todd, Fink, and others. Thank you so much. I'll pass.
Thank you, Ed. Pleasure to officially hear from you or meet you. And thank you for the kind words. Your reflection on context collapse, is powerful. I give this example sometimes in my life when not too long ago, when I was driving into a parking lot and there was only one spot left and the car was like taking up two spots. And without the context, I'm like, in my mind, is it so hard to just park within the line so that everyone can have a spot? And then shortly after that, an ambulance appears and that person was having a seizure. And of course, I didn't have that context, but I think that's, a good parallel to all the things you're talking about in the world. We just really don't know each other. And it's sure by governments and people in power, because if I knew more about my neighbors in my town, we'd have a lot more solidarity. It'd be a lot harder to exploit us. But if I know nothing about my next door neighbor and I'm always suspicious of everybody, it's hard for people to, fight for the and not be exploited. So it's a tool for division, I would say. And of course, there's a lot of money to be made through the technology. I'm not saying it can't do good also, but it's something that we have to remember. If I were to treat somebody in therapy for road rage, we would talk about the context collapse. We don't know why people are behaving the way that they are. This, judging prior to knowing the full context, we can practice that kind of detachment and compassionate detachment. It's like, I don't know all the details here, but I know that I love and care about people. Thank you.
Amen. Well said. Yeah. I mean, in the Four Agreements, when it says don't make assumptions, and if you're going to make assumptions, assume love. Just assume love.
And not take things personally in the four agreements. So you put those two together, right? Where
Yeah. It's a really
there's
good.
more to this story beyond me and how this impacts me.
Yep. And
Hi, thanks for a great talk as usual, very stimulating. Something that you mentioned in your talk made me think of a concert I went to this week of Stephen Wilson, and I have a video of a previous concert where what he does at the beginning is he displays a bunch of stereotypical images with labels underneath: father, mother, terrorist, etc. And then he redisplays the image and flips the labels. So the mother becomes the terrorist, the terrorist becomes the father, and it just like challenges you to see people in different contexts. So that's one of the things I liked about him. So at this concert this week, I was captive standing in the line, long line for the restroom at the intermission. And there was a gentleman standing next to me who started a conversation about why this line was so long for a progressive rock concert. And he said, well, you know why there's no women here, right? And I waited. And he said, because the average intellect is lower than guys. Their IQ is 25 points lower. And he started going into all these sexist, arguments. And I took some issue with it, but standing in line, you're kind of captive and you don't want to make too much trouble. But at the end of the conversation, we separated and went to our stalls, and neither of us was pissed off. But it just goes to show you that no group that you belong to is a monolith. If I ever thought of this as, this audience as being somehow more awakened than a regular rock and roll audience, there was my example that that's not the case. But also that it wasn't mine to change his mind, but it was also, a peaceful exchange, and how you can walk away from that in a loving way, and also thinking a little differently. And maybe, our exchange opens a door for him to think about things a little differently, that maybe there are people in the prog rock audience that don't think like him. I pass.
Thank you, Vince. Great points. I like your point about the illusion of monoliths. Also, research shows that there are more genetic variations within cultures and identity groups than between them. There can also be more variations in beliefs within a subculture than between a subculture. And that's just to further illustrate your point. And so, yeah, thank you. Again, with technology, it's easy to dehumanize entire swaths of people, up to, entire genders, like you were describing in that anecdote. Yeah. So many other variables. Go ahead, Maureen. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I love that you practice connection, not correction, because I would have been like, you are incorrect here, and let me give you the statistics. But so connection, you made a great connection with him, and maybe not a correction of him. And I have found, when the opportunity arises, that it's also okay to share a personal story, because a personal story isn't a statistic. It's funny because my wife used to love to come to these concerts, or, I'm here with 3 women, or, I don't know, whatever your personal story would be. But then even that kind of feels like a correction. But when I learn somebody's story and their story is different than mine, it's not them spitting facts or figures, or factoids. It's like they're telling me about themselves. And that feels like it's common ground. Oh, I have a sister too, or that's an interesting way to see it. I mean, I don't know, like, because I think that these are opportunities. I think there's opportunities to not correct, but also maybe to connect, to make a connection there without negating your truth. And it's not easy, but that's all I'll say about that.
One other addition to that, IQ is a Western patriarchal construct. Anyway, it's also been shown to not be static. And even if it were true that a group had a lower average IQ, we now know that oppression, poverty affects IQ. There was a study done in India where a certain group of farmers are poorer in the spring and richer in the fall, and they administered IQ tests and found that they had two different IQs depending on their socioeconomic status. So sometimes when the poor are dehumanized by saying doesn't matter, they would make bad decisions anyway. They just don't know how to be wealthy because they're not smart enough. A lot of that has to do with the environmental circumstances why people might test a certain way. Furthermore, we know now that IQ is not one dimensional. There's natural intelligence and kinesthetic intelligence and musical intelligence. A psychologist discovered an indigenous group of people in South America in the 70s, Daniel Everett. It's in the documentary, The Grammar of Happiness. And other people thought that these were just primitive, unintelligent people. But he was describing how like a person could go naked into the jungle, come back 2 days later with a boat and clothes and food and all kinds of stuff, which most modern or more intelligent people could never do. So anyways, there's a lot of dimensions to this. Thank you.
Yeah, one of the things that it made me, I left the exchange thinking is that it reminds me of how like we could put someone in jail and then accuse them of not being adventurous. Is like our society builds the structures and then we blame the people in the structure that we've built for being lacking in some way. Thank you.
Yeah, I think like I that was a hard metaphor to navigate, but like I think what is an example of that is like putting somebody in a food desert and saying you're not a good chef. You know what I mean? So yeah, I mean that's
Yeah. Like to that point, 90% of inmates on death row are victims of horrific sexual abuse in childhood. Does does that mean they didn't commit a crime? No, but the context absolutely matters. It's easy to think that I would never commit a crime, no matter if I had a history like that. But we don't know. We don't have the internalized experiences of other people. It would be better to say, let's try to build a world where there isn't, that kind of violence, and that will also reduce violent crime. So yeah, there's a lot of different ways we can approach the compassion and the love, and I think we can have compassion for people who do evil or engage in hatred because we don't have all the context.
Thanks, Vince. And here's Steve.
Hi, nice to see you. And Todd, I'd like to applaud you for what you said about IQs. It's absolutely correct that in this country, and when you tell people this, they kind of look at you like you're nuts. In this country, IQs were developed by the military to weed out people that they thought would be appropriate for the military or not appropriate for the military. And then it morphed later into various IQ tests and other things. So, and generally, I have an advanced degree in psychology and we were taught that IQs absolutely mean nothing because of the socioeconomic factor. They mean nothing. And they're used, they're basically used today for monetary means, for billing people and whatnot. That's not what I came on to talk about. I am, of course, I live in northern Vermont. I've been a Course in Miracles student for a long time. I'm also an organic herbalist and medicinalist. And I recently found out that there is a development proposed right next to my property line where I have all these rare and endangered plants. And so what I've heard today I sort of came on here today with a heavy heart, wondering like the people that want to put up this development right now because of the real estate market, they're looking exclusively to make a lot of money. Okay. And so, and then I'm trying to figure out a strategy, and I ask you all to pray that somehow I can make people understand that it's important we need to provide shelter for humans, but we also need to provide shelter for animals and plants. So many of our natural plants have become medicines and whatnot. And it's, I think like I feel like a little teeny person that's, like talking to money and and so, but I'm going to do that. I'm not going to be angry. I'm just going to be factual and try to at the board meeting for this is to try to come from love, because evil, from the course's perspective, evil doesn't exist because it's not creative. And we, as the children of God, prime creator, we have been given the opportunity to create in a positive way. And so that what I see right now with what's going on in the world and all the destruction that's going on is the way to counter that is to do creative things where we live and around where we live. And that will be, hopefully it will catch on. So that's it. Thank you. And thank you, Maureen and Todd.
Yeah, so glad that you're here today. I'm so glad that you got to hear this message. And I'm so glad that you're going to take the opportunity to not to go into this to make anybody wrong or to feel like you're a David and a Goliath. You get to speak your truth and then accept that everything is gently planned by one who knows our highest good and knows the highest good of those plants and knows the highest good of those people who are creating this, who knows the highest good of everyone. So, you get called to speak the truth, and then you can hold space of knowing that, this is a dream and I don't have to lose my peace over the dream. I'm just going to continue to speak the truth and do the next right thing without making anybody wrong, without making myself a victim, without fear. And these are, we get to apply this now, right? You get to apply everything you've learned. Now you get to apply it. And there's nothing to fear. I know you feel like your knees are shaky and your chin is warbly and you got a big fat golden heart, but back of all this is love.
Yeah. And it's something the plant saving and stuff, something I've been doing all of my life. So it's really, it's like, so I ask your prayers and I will go in there and be a peaceful person.
Yeah. And affirmative prayer, the most productive affirmative prayer, invoke the detachment that Todd was talking about. So pray the prayer, and then add this or something better. And I don't know what that looks like.
Let's do something better.
So let this unfold for the highest good of me and the plants. and those people, or something even better that I can't even imagine. Maybe they're going to build a whole garden of endangered species, and who knows? Who knows what's going to happen?
It's a
But
good
don't
point.
underestimate the power of love.
Thank you for that. Yeah, Maureen, that was.
Thank you for all of you.
And Steve, thank you. Yeah, I have a lot of respect for what you're doing and what you care about. And, I think that's why we have these myths, like Maureen just mentioned, the David and Goliath myth, because that's the consolidation of power. It all converges around money, whereas goodness is so multidimensional. I mean, many of us care about love and compassion, but until you shared your story with us, that could have been outside of our scope of activism, for example. So the whole universe is darkness peppered with some stars, and then our task is to like protect this little flame in our heart, but that darkness can't really touch it in terms of our spiritual home, and not losing sight of that by, as Maureen said, getting too attached to the phenomenal world, but trusting that my mission is getting more clarified by my pain. Thank you, Steve, and I'll pray for that also.
Thank you all.
Hi, Laura.
Oh, hi. Thank you for your talking about all the versions of awareness that kind of come up through the different traditions besides A Course in Miracles. I'm a Course in Miracles person. 5 years ago, I moved into a community I moved from the San Francisco Bay Area into a community that's predominantly red. And I got here and I had so much fear because I thought, I had all these preconceived notions about how I would be treated and perceived. And after I'd been here for a while, I realized that my thoughts and beliefs weren't tattooed on my forehead, and and nobody else's are either. And I started becoming more open, and I recognized that all the people in the community that I've encountered are these open-hearted, generous, loving people that essentially want exactly the same things that I want. They want love in their lives. They want peace. They're just coming at it from their own angles, and their angles are different from mine. But I truly believe that what I thought of as evil is just a fraction of thought in people's minds. It's not who they are. And the Course in Miracles has really expanded that in my life. It's really brought me to that awareness that, there may be incidental situations and they may be huge situations. The whole country, the whole world seems like it's blowing up, but the vast majority of us are the same, the sameness, within. We're all God. We're all love, and doing the best we can. I'm so grateful to the Course in Miracles for, opening my eyes more and more. And I love my community. I just love it. And it is funny too, because there have been protests on the boardwalk from, what I would consider the left. And so much of it, they're not expressing love. They're like, screw those guys, and all these rude comments about, the right wing thoughts that are being expressed. And I've driven by and I thought, well, you're just, pouring gasoline on the fire. That's not going to help. So yeah, even the people that I agree with, I don't agree with. Yeah. Okay.
You're muted.
Maybe this is exactly what it would take for us to wake up. Maybe this is exactly what it would take for us to see how silly it all is and how faceted it all is and how unimportant some of these things are, you know?
Yeah.
I agree. Thanks for diagnosing all that really well, Laura. I feel like some of my hopefulness is that a lot of the stuff that is facilitating this with the technology is so brand new. Even the internet is so brand new. And I think people are trying it out, and it has a lot of destructive sides to it. And I'm personally finding that I'm just losing interest in the internet and in social media, and just getting back to, like you said, community and reading books and going for walks, you know. So I think there's a lot of potential that a lot of people will find that they they can't engage in this way. They've got to see the whole person again. Or when they realize that at some point 99% of all of the digital world will be automated. It'll all be bots. I mean, we'll get to a point where the likelihood you encounter a human is very rare.
Mm.
And by then, will people be like, I'd rather spend time with humans? I don't know. Or will the bots get so human-like they'll say, I'm done with humans, I'm just engaged with bots? We'll see. But I think there is meaning behind all the temporary frustration.
Thanks.
We have Sherry's going to close this out with a prayer, but we have Ed. Do you have your hand up from an old comment, or is this a new?
No, actually, I'm glad I'll make it very short, Maureen. You can keep me accountable. Todd, I wanted to mention one thing. Maureen specifically talks about classrooms. She gets right to the point a lot of the time. So with Vince's share, she got to the point again when she called it connection, not correction. Ironically, I started my law enforcement career as a correctional officer at the Cook County Jail. I mean, you could call it jail guard if you want. Lots of people say it that way. So it becomes a question of what correction really is. And I can promise long before I was in the course, I was doing a lot more understanding of connection with residents of the Cook County Jail and having nothing to do with correction. So when conversations come up about IQ and classes of people and the kinds of things that we get into all sorts of discussions about, yeah, the Cook County Jail for years. And I wasn't a resident. I was trying to be part of let's call it the solution. I'll pass.
Oh, well, thanks for that. It's nice to know people are making connections at the Cook County Jail. Yeah, that's very good to know. Appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Ed.
Yeah.
I accidentally removed Steve's hand. I don't know if he wanted to pipe in real quick again. Sorry about that, Steve.
Sure.
Yeah, after I got done, I realized there was something that I wanted to share that's extremely significant to me. My father was born in Quebec in Canada. I live on the Canadian border. And when my father was a baby, he was diagnosed with dysentery. And the doctors said that he would die. They had no medicines that would cure him. We had an aunt that was Native American Abenaki, and she whipped up some Native American herbs that cured him of his dysentery. And the reason I am here is because of plant medicine. It's from plant medicine, and I feel that one of my purposes on the planet is to make people aware of every living thing is part of God, and it's all, and we need to protect everything. That's it.
Steve. Thanks, Steve.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, good news. Yes,
Yeah.
we got Sherry here who's going to pray. So add a little of that plant medicine in her prayer.
Thank you. I want to thank everyone who was here today, everyone who was on our program. Thank you so much, Todd. Always so illuminating. This is our closing prayer. Dear Divine, as we enter this week ahead, please bless every person and situation we encounter. May we bring the light as we see the light in each encounter. We thank you for every situation and for the gift of being able to choose again. And so it is. Wishing everyone a blessed week, and we'll see you all next week.
Next week, we have Paul Farini, who's coming. He's the author of many books, and he's a great teacher. It's his first time here. And we've got a couple of Paul Farini fans. So if you're one of them, be sure to check us out next week. Thank you so much, Todd Fink. Wonderful. And thank you, Sherry and Jack and all the helping hands who have joined
My
us.
pleasure. Thank you all.
Thanks, Todd. See
Yeah.
y'all.
Bye.
Namaste.